Throughout the 90s and 2000s, most developers focused solely on visuals and improving the realism of graphics. If a game didn't have the latest graphics, it wasn't worth making. That was the attitude at the time, but not everyone looked at game development in the same way, and Jeff Vogel was one such person. In an industry that was solely focusing on cinematics, realism, violence and action, many of the genres of old were forgotten. But Vogel on the other hand had his sights on the classic RPG genre, where plot and gameplay are the main focus, while visuals and animations are kept minimalistic. And what we got is RPGs that excel greatly at storytelling and gameplay, while the rest of the industry was dishing out games that were lacking in both in favour of graphics. And the game we're looking at today could very well be the best game that Vogel has yet produced. That game is Avernum 3 Ruined World. Avernum 3 Ruined World is a classic RPG that released January 31st, 2018. It is developed and published by Spiderweb Software and is the final installment in the reboot of the original Avernum series, which was a remake of their Exile series. Avernum 3 provides exactly what you would expect from one of Vogel's games: a deep and expansive plot, classic and well-designed RPG gameplay, and a world full of lore and wonders to discover. I may not have played all of Vogel's games, but out of those that I have, Avernum 3 is his finest work yet. The plot to Avernum 3 takes place several years after the events of the previous game. The Avernites, an underground dwelling people whom either they or their ancestors were exiled to Avernum, generally on unfair trials, won the war against the exiling empire thanks to the help of powerful allies. With the war won, the Avernites decided it is time to return to the surface where they belong. You take on the role of a party of adventurers who are being sent to the surface to scout the surrounding area, to ensure that it is safe for the Avernites to begin building a new life there. Upon reaching the surface, the Avernites find that not all is what it is supposed to be. A threat has emerged, and one that is powerful enough to not only destroy the surface world and the Empire, but the underground world too, along with all the races that live down there. Who is responsible for this threat? Can it be stopped, or is it already too late? Only you can find the answers to those questions. Unlike in Avernum 3, where the game and plot were set over a series of chapters, the plot to Avernum 3 progresses as you do, based on your exploration and completion of tasks. In order to progress in the story, you need to explore, investigate, and speak with the various characters, and it must be done on your own initiative, as opposed to being told what to do and where to go. How you go about doing this is entirely up to you. It is really well designed, and gives a great sense of adventure to the game. There is no hand-holding, there are no directions. You are sent out into a massive hostile world where you need to learn and adapt. It is a very well written plot and one that is slow to get started, but once it kicks into gear, it becomes extremely gripping as the mystery begins to unfold, one piece at a time. Indeed, it isn't anything that hasn't been done before, but it is how it is paced and designed that makes it as engaging. If you love deep and mystery-filled plots, based in a lore-filled world where not a single bit of detail is left unanswered, and where you need to figure out things for yourself, then Avernum 3 is definitely going to be for you. If you prefer games that tend to hold your hand and tell you where and when to go to places, then Avernum 3 isn't going to be to your tastes. The gameplay to Avernum 3 is similar to that of other classic RPG titles, such as Baldur's Gate and Icewind Dale, consisting of two core elements, that being exploration and combat. First up is the exploration. In Avernum 3 you move through the world by clicking on locations on the world map, but in Avernum 3 you explore the world map yourself. You explore both the underground and the surface world, both of which are of considerable size to say the least. While exploring you find new dungeons, towns, cities and secret locations that contain either quest items or treasures of some kind. There are also caches scattered throughout the massive world that come in the form of dirt mounds. Depending on how much nature lore skill your party have between them, determines whether or not you can search the cache. Along with that, you will also come across patrols of human or monsters. Some are random, while others are specially placed encounters such as bandit patrols or monsters blocking the path. Most encounters are optional and can be bypassed by simply going around them, but fighting is always good for extra experience gain and occasional items. As you journey throughout the world, you gain experience from discovering new locations and for completing quests that are given by characters found in the many towns and cities. Just the exploration of Avernum 3 alone gives so much for the player to do. With over 100 locations to discover and explore, lots of secret caches to find, and countless characters to interact with, there's an enormous amount of content to experience. And every second of it is exciting, as you just never know what surprises and threats await just around the corner. And we haven't even gotten into the combat yet. The combat of the game consists of classic turn-based RPG action. Essentially how it works is that the speed of each of the characters, both your party and the enemies, are taken into account, and then they make their move one by one. Each character has a certain amount of action points to use each turn, which can be used for either moving, attacking, using an item, or casting a spell or skill. Once all the units on the battlefield have made their action, the turn ends, and the unit's action points are restored, and the next round begins. Throughout the battles, both you and your enemy will have all forms of skills and spells that can be used, both for damaging each other and for various buffs and debuffs to inflict. From spells that increase damage and accuracy, to immobilizing a unit, to spells like Torn Shield that inflict damage back on the attacker. You need to use every spell and skill to your advantage, as if you don't, the enemy will, and this is ever more important the higher the difficulty you choose to play. It adds a massive level of strategy to the game, and when leveling up and distributing your character's stat points, skill points and choosing what traits to give them can really make a big difference. Not to mention what new spells you buy from trainers and shops throughout the world. There's never a dull moment while in combat. No matter how many of a specific enemy you've defeated, there is always a chance of a surprise being in store for you. Too often I became overconfident, only for that confidence to later come back and bite me in the ass. It truly is exhilarating, and never gets dull no matter how long you play. If there was one criticism that I would have, it would be that at the beginning of the game, it is quite hard, even on the lower difficulties. You will often find yourself wandering into areas that you are not yet ready or able to handle until you've leveled up a bit. But that's about it. Both the exploration and combat are exciting on their own, but together they are a match made in heaven that work in complete harmony together. For what the game lacks in visuals and animations, it more than makes up for in deep, complex and invigorating gameplay that exceeds anything that Vogel has previously made. The character development of Avernum 3 is exactly what you would expect from a classic RPG. Each time you level up, you gain a stat point and 2 skill points that you can distribute how you see fit. For the stat points, you can place them into either of the 4 stats, those being strength, intelligence, dexterity and endurance. Strength increases your overall damage and ability to hit, along with weight you can carry and equipment. Intelligence affects magic damage, ability to hit with magic and defense against magic. Dexterity increases your ranged weapon damage, accuracy and the ability to dodge attacks. And finally is endurance, which increases your health and overall natural defense against damage. Then there are your skills. Each character has 2 skill trees consisting of combat and magic. Any character can train in any form of combat, but what each character specialises in depends on their class. The combat tree is for melee combat consisting of blades and polearms, and ranged combat consists of missile weapons and throwing weapons. At the bottom of the tree you will find the basic skills for each of the weapons. These must be increased in order to increase the skills further up the tree. For example, if your blade skill is at level 3, you cannot increase any of the above skills further than that level. So specialising a character in a specific type of weapon is highly recommended in order to maximise their abilities. As for the magic tree, it works in pretty much the same way on principle, but it does contain a few additional skills that are useful for non-magic users of the party to invest in. Those skills consist of first aid, nature lore, lockpicking and luck. First aid restores a certain amount of health and energy after combat to your party. The higher it is, the better the effect. Nature lore, as previously mentioned when discussing the gameplay, allows you to find caches hidden throughout the world. The more points your party has invested in the skill, the more difficult and rewarding caches can be opened. As for luck and lockpicking, they are pretty much self-explanatory. Lockpicking allows you to unlock doors. The higher the skill, the more difficult the lock you can open, and luck affects the overall luckiness of a character, which can help out in all manner of ways. As for the magic skills, they work just like the combat skills and are separated into 2 specialisations, one for mages and one for priests. You will need to keep levelling up the basic skill to be able to continue levelling up the higher skills, just like with the combat skills. The more points you put into the skills, the greater the effects, and the more powerful your spells will become. Finally are traits, which are granted to you every couple of levels. These work in similar fashion to that of the old Fallout games. They grant you additional bonuses that individually don't make a huge difference, but as you gain more, they really start to take effect. These include increasing stats, increasing melee damage, range damage, accuracy, health, energy and more. With the stats, skills and traits combined together, there is quite a complex character development in the game. Each character needs to be leveled up differently depending on their class and specialisations to get the most of them. Branching their skill points too much can end up making the character a weak link in the group, so there is a form of strategy behind it. It doesn't do anything different to any other kind of game, but what Avernum 3's character development does do is give you a complex and exciting system that modern dumbed down RPGs can't be bothered with having, and it's marvellous. What more can I really say that I haven't already said numerous times now between this review and my preview a week or so ago? Avernum 3 is utterly brilliant. It is an excellent, well-paced and designed plot, a rich and lore-filled world, exciting, strategic and engaging combat, and a complex and deep character development. It may not be a game that is pretty visually or smooth and realistic through animation, but for what it lacks in that, it more than makes up for in everything else. It is retro, it is classic, it is traditional, it is a true RPG, and it is Jeff Vogel at his absolute best. It's an RPG that is a bit slow to begin with, but once things start moving, it hooks you and doesn't let go until the end. And with that, I'll give Avernum 3 a 9 out of 10. As I've said before, it doesn't reinvent the wheel, but makes rediscovering it a massive amount of fun. It certainly isn't a game that would be to everyone's tastes, but for those who love retro and enjoy delving into the gaming style of yore, then Avernum 3 is exactly what you've been looking for. And it is proof that a game doesn't need to have state-of-the-art graphics to achieve brilliance.